Hello Year 8, it's Miss Patel here. So in today's clip I'm going to be talking about the theme for this half term, which is improving rights. Okay, so we've looked at different themes in Year 8. So just to recap, we've looked at Empire in the first term. In the second term we've looked at Lancashire and the wider world, and in this term we're going to be looking at improving rights. So I'm just going to go through some of the topics that we're going to study. Like always, we're going to start off with the ancient times. So we're going to look at the Romans, then we're going to move on to medieval, early modern, and then modern. Okay, so some of the things that we're going to be looking at first is women. Okay, so we're going to look at rights of women from Roman times all the way to medieval. So we start off with looking at Boudicca, but then also just Roman women in general. So we're going to look at difference between rich and poor women and the status of women. But then we also look at in modern times, we look at the suffragettes. Something we've studied in Year 7 before, so it's going to be a bit of a recap, and then we're going to build on that knowledge, and especially link it to Manchester, which is where some of it all started with Emmeline Pankhurst. Okay, we are also going to be looking at Tudor women, Tudor queens in particular. So then we look at monarchy and royal power there as well. So we've got that as an extension of our theme, and thinking about how rights for women in very high positions have changed throughout time. We are also going to be looking at the BAME community. So we're going to be looking at Black, Asian, ethnic minorities, and thinking about how their rights have improved and the kind of struggles and achievements they've faced as a community. We started off looking at this last week with the Beachy Head Lady. So that's something that you should be familiar with. And then we're going to move on to looking at that in terms of race relations as well, especially when it comes to Lancashire. So we can think about what we studied previously last term. Okay, going back to the some of the themes that we did study last year. I'm going to look at Peterloo as well. So Peterloo Massacre, we did look at it very, very briefly in Year 7. And that, again, links to Manchester. And we're going to be thinking about political rights. So it's a bit like the suffragettes, but this is for working class men. And we call them the Chartists. Sorry, excuse me. Right, so these are some of the things that we'll be studying, and the theme of improving rights is quite important because we're going to be looking at how rights have changed all throughout this period from the Roman times to modern times. And then we're not going to just say everybody has improved rights. We're going to think about it from a critical perspective and think about what else needs to be done, and I'm sure you have some ideas of your own. Okay, so that's just a bit of an introduction to the themes present this term. Okay, so we've been looking at the story of Boudicca, and I'm going to just go through this storyboard that I've created on the rebellion, and we're going to look at it in terms of how significant this rebellion was, but also in terms of the theme, which is improving rights. Okay, so I'm just going to get stuck in. We've got King Prasutagus here and Queen Boudicca, and they are in charge of the Iceni tribe, which is in modern-day Norfolk. Okay, and at this time, the Romans had invaded Britain, but the Iceni tribe and the Romans were actually on quite good terms. Okay, so they lived peacefully side by side. However, in 60 AD, Prasutagus dies and leaves Boudicca and their two daughters half the land of the Iceni tribe. So the other half was going to go to the Romans, and then Boudicca was going to take the other half. However, in reality, this didn't actually happen because under Roman law, Boudicca couldn't actually inherit all the land, and so it belonged to the Romans. Now, Boudicca could have accepted this, but she didn't. She decided to rebel because she felt that they were taking her power and her rights away from her, okay? And so she fights back and she joins with a neighbouring tribe and decides to attack the Romans, and she's quite fearless. In fact, she actually destroys the temple of Claudius, okay? So quite a bold move. Of course, the Romans are going to fight back, and they do. So they send an army of about 4,000 men to fight Boudicca and the rebels. Unfortunately, this didn't quite work because Boudicca was victorious in this battle, and the only Romans that were really left alive were the ones on horses. And that is my very poor attempt to draw a horse. Okay, so... and she comes back, but this time she comes back even worse. And what she does is she attacks Londinium, which is modern day London, and other major cities, and she kills everyone in sight. And she's quite savage and brutal in her methods. So she puts everything on fire and destroys everything in sight. Of course, Rome's going to fight back again. So this time in 61 AD, the Romans come, and they come far more prepared. So it's Paulinius who's actually leading the Roman army, and he picks the place of battle, so he's got the advantage there, and he's got really good weaponry, and he's got more men as well, okay? What ends up happening is that the Romans are victorious, and most of the rebels belonging to Boudicca die, okay? So what actually happened to Boudicca? Some say she actually killed herself, and then others say she actually died in battle, but we're not quite sure. But we do know that she did die, okay? So that is a very brief summary of the battle and the rebellion with Queen Boudicca, okay? Now, it was a failure for Boudicca, but it's still significant, and we're going to be looking at what that word means. What I want you to do is just pause the clip and think about what that word significant means, okay? But also, why do you think this rebellion is significant, okay? Okay, so we're going to look at this question in a bit more detail. So why is this rebellion significant? So significant means important, remembered, short-term and long-term impact on something that is remarkable. Okay, so what I want you to do is just pause the clip and think about, why was this rebellion significant at the time? Okay, and why was it significant since the time? Okay, just pause and just jot down some ideas, and then I'll go through my suggestions. Okay, so here are some of my suggestions. So she's a female ruler at a time when men had more control and power. Okay, so it's the Roman times, men have more power, they have more rights, and she decides to fight back against the odds. Okay, Boudicca led her own army, and this is really significant because at the time it was only men that would lead armies, but she led her own army, and she actually did win some battles. In fact, she actually took London from the Romans, which is very, very significant. She also negotiated with other tribes, remember at the start, to get them to fight with her. So she's very good at making alliances, which is very significant as well. And she actually fought for what she believed in, okay? Which is significant then and significant now as well. So moving on to significance since the time. So it showed how violent and oppressive the Romans were, because during the time of the Iceni tribe and when Prasutagus dies, the Romans are very, very oppressive to the Iceni tribe. They take everything, they start looting and destroying their land, okay? And it highlights how there were violent aspects of the Roman Empire. Again, she's a female ruler, and female rulers since her who have been very, very successful. We can give examples of that from our work as well. She fought injustice and stood up for herself and her rights and her people. Okay, this is really, really significant because it links back to our theme of improving rights. So it's all about improving her life for herself as a woman, but also for her children, her two daughters. Okay, and then it leads us to the road to equality and women's rights. Okay, so these are some of my suggestions on significant since and significance. Significant since and significant at the time. Okay, right, that's it. I will see you hopefully very soon in the next clip. Thank you.